You want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered. And this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun.
All right, hey everybody, welcome back. It's Friday's Finest. It's the day you've been waiting for. You talk about it, you know you do. The water cooler, you're waiting for Friday's Finest. You've got it. James, Chip, myself are all back after the break. We got lots to discuss from not only sports from the championship weekend this past weekend, also things coming up. We got a little bit of political to talk about. But then we're going to get into some fun on quarterbacks and how James and Chip are just completely wrong on quarterback selections for this draft coming up. I'll be happy to explain, and I'm sure they'll be happy to tell me I'm wrong as we go forward here. But also we've got hiring coaches. Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel will not be head coaches on the sideline come this next season. Amazing kind of stat as you look at it. And then also we're going to talk, going back to the archives, and this will be one where I'd love for y'all to get on there, DougCollinsPodcast.com, hit the website, hit the email button and send it, because we're going to talk old TV today. We're going to have some fun with this. So lots to go here on the Doug Collins Podcast right after the break. We're going to dive right into it.
Hey, folks, when you look out and you see the country and just the disarray it is, you see the Biden administration, you see the wholesale prices have just went through the roof again. Inflation is tearing us up. If you have your finances all impinged in just a few areas, if you're just in stocks and bonds and you're not diversified, I got some news for you. You need a navigator. You need somebody to help you get to where you need to go with those finances. And I can't think of anybody better to do that than my friends at Legacy Precious Metals. You need precious metals in that portfolio. You need gold and silver. And Legacy Precious Metals, the folks there, they're the navigators. They know how to deal with tough times. They know and how to look ahead and take your personal situation and make it something that can be workable for you in the long term, because that's at the end of the day, that's the one you're most concerned about. You need to make sure that your personal finances and your retirement are secure. You need folks like Legacy Precious Metals helping you in that. They will take the time to learn you. They'll learn your finances. They'll learn where your investment goals are, and they'll help you get there. And metals and gold right now in this kind of crazy inflation, in this kind of crazy economy with the Biden's economy is just, you need that help. And Legacy Precious Metals is the one to do that. So give Legacy Precious Metals a call, 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can always visit them online at legacypminvestments.com, and you can download their free investor's guide. Legacy Precious Metals, they're the ones you need. They're the navigators to help you through these turbulent times. Hey, everybody, Mike Lindell and the MyPillow employees want to thank all of my listeners, the great Doug Collins podcast listeners, for your continued support. To thank you, they're offering an overstocked clearance sale right now for the best price you ever use when you use the promo code Collins, COLLINS, and you get free shipping on the entire order. You get 50% off the MyPillow 2.0, the brand new flannel sheets that just arrived and won't last long. Get six-pack towel sets for only $29.98. And take advantage of the free shipping on large items like mattresses and mattress toppers. 100% made here in the United States and on sale for as low as $99. Everything is on sale, from the brand new kitchen towels that have the same technology as the bath towels that actually absorb dog beds, blankets, couch pillows, and much, much more. To get the best specials ever, go to the mypillow.com, and use the promo code Collins, COLLINS, or call 800-986-3994 and use the same keyword Collins, COLLINS, and get free shipping on your entire order while supplies last. MyPillow products, thank you. Y'all go check them out.
All right, we're here ready to go on this side of it, and we've got our cohort here today. Yes, I'm here, and we got James. James, say hello in the middle of construction zone.
Good morning, everybody.
James is
I
trying
have nothing else to say. Detroit lost. I'm in a good mood.
Oh, Lord.
Listen, Detroit lost. I'm in a good mood, guys.
All right, moving right along, we have Chip with us as well. Chip Lake's with us, and we're glad to have Chip. Chip, everything copacetic there in Metro Atlanta?
Yes, sir. Everything's great.
Keeping it all going. Well, good. Well, we're headed. Let's hit a couple of quick things right now. Politics is sort of the election campaigns of what I knew would probably happen. They went into a lull here for the last couple of weeks. The big thing, though, that I wanted to talk about with you, and I've had a lot of conversations, I know you probably have as well, is the fourth quarter reports were coming out, and especially for the committees. Your Republican National Committee, your Democrat National Committee, your states. And the thing that just jumped out at me is, number one, the fallout from Ronna McDaniels being reelected as RNC chair last year is real. And they're having trouble raising money. But what concerns me even more as a conservative, and something you and I have had to deal with for years in campaigns, is you've got states, and I'm just going to be overarching here, Colorado, Michigan, Georgia, and Arizona, and several of these parties that frankly don't have enough money to start the campaign cycle right now. Chip, how does that, from a perspective of somebody consulting or for candidates who are running statewide in some of these races, the lack of a foundation in some of these state parties from a dollar perspective, not necessarily a people perspective, but the dollar perspective, to start maximizing some of the, ads, everything else?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's it's a new era, right? And how we fund, especially as Republicans, how we fund campaigns and elections. And, it seems like every cycle over the last 12, 14, 15, 16 years, candidates have had to rely less and less upon party committees. When I was growing up, party committees, both the national committee and state parties, were the entities that were flush with cash. And, it's just not the same anymore. I mean, the era of super PACs and 501c4s, social welfare organizations, as designated by the IRS, they've taken a much larger role. And, donors, especially our donors on our side, they want to give a little closer to specific candidates, right? They don't feel very comfortable giving their money to a state party or even the national party and feeling like it's going to go to where it needs to go. So as targeting's gotten more, gotten more specialized over time, so is political fundraising, right? I mean, if you want to give to a particular candidate, there's likely a super PAC or an independent political committee, depending on what state you are, that can do that. And we're not in a great spot right now. It's going to be interesting to see when Trump becomes the nominee officially. Whenever that is, it'll be interesting to see if Ronna McDaniel stays on, and or if he brings somebody else in and asks for her to kind of step aside, and then how it does from a fundraising perspective, that time. But Doug, I just think it's if you're a candidate and you're on the ballot in November, more than in previous cycles, you've got to find a way to kind of raise the money yourself with your specific campaign committee or a super PAC and an independent political committee. And I think as every cycle goes by, that's more and more pronounced.
Yeah, for anybody out there that thought that McCain-Feingold was a good thing is just ridiculous. I mean, because you go back and look at it now, what McCain-Feingold did not take money out of politics. What it did is make it go into the shadows even more, in which you took it out of the power. And again, people didn't like the quote party politics. Okay. They didn't like the party and RNC and the DNC and all this, but really now, at least there was a focal point to where you could look for, okay, here's where it's heading. We see this. And then you had the parties and the candidates going by that. You don't have that now. You have no idea where you're going to get hit from, who from, buy from. And now we're seeing in California, I just saw this, the old trick is happening out there now. Adam Schiff is actually running ads to promote Steve Garvey in that Senate primary so that he can come in second ahead of Katie Porter, again, believing that, and rightfully so by the polling, that he can beat Steve Garvey easier than he can beat Katie Porter.
That's the thing. A national party or a local party could never make that play with the Steve Garvey candidacy. But, you can, right now. And what makes it very interesting, Doug, on our side, our nominee is going to be on the opposite side of a 98 and 96, 98 count, felony political indictment. So, the National Party's not going to be raising money for voter contact. They're going to be raising money to pay lawyers. And, that's what, Trump's PAC's been doing a good job of. And, when these reports came out, I mean, that's what the mainstream media is kind of focused on, is how much money he's paid lawyers in that amount of time. And it's an astounding amount. It kind of gives you, a kind of a peek behind the curtain on exactly what he's up against from a legal perspective.
Yeah. And he's also, and again, all at the same point, the money and everything else. Poll came out we're on Friday morning. We're actually taping this the night before. On Thursday night, just came out. A new Fox survey out of Georgia had Trump at 51% to 43% for Biden. Outside the 8 points is outside the margin of error. And interestingly enough, the breakdowns, and this is Chip, you and I, of course, we're the ones who go to look at the breakdowns and some of the crosstabs, and they have put out some of it. What was interesting is of the Georgia voters favoring Trump. This was an interesting statistic. No doubt among white evangelicals, no doubt among conservatives, whites without degrees, rural voters, independents, 51-31 Trump in Georgia. But this one is one that I don't know how to take, and I'm not sure where it'll end. Voters under 35, Trump 50, Biden 43. I mean, this early look, and you and I both know snapshots in time. I get that, but that's an interesting play. If you're a Biden campaign looking at Georgia right now, and you're seeing that number, and you're also seeing, let me go back to this right quick. There was, this one is another number for Biden that I think would need to worry about. It's about right, but you look at this, he is at 23%, but Trump is at 23% African-American voters in this poll.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that, Doug. I mean, look, it's been a bad couple months for the president. It's been a good couple months for Donald Trump. I mean, at the end of the day, I think those voters that Joe Biden has lost over the last 2 months, I think probably come home to him. I don't think it's. I mean, the reality is, 2.3 out of every 10 African-American voters are not going to be voting for Donald Trump. It's just the reality of it. But he doesn't need that in order to win. I mean, if Donald Trump gets 11, 12% of the black vote, he's going to be president again. And so yeah, look, I mean, these are snapshots in time, but the snapshots that we're looking at look really good and they look really favorable. And if you're a Democrat, there's not a lot in there other than knowing that you have a lot of time between, early February and early November. And at this point in time, that's the best thing going for you is the resource of time.
Hey, Chip, I want to bring up Wisconsin's also came out tonight as well, last time when we were talking about. But Wisconsin was an interesting part. It's dead heat, by the way. Dead heat, 47-47 in Wisconsin, which for Trump, as a Republican running it, that's where you want to be. I mean, that tells you that you're in the game.
That's right.
But interestingly enough, here's an interesting thing. Economy in both Georgia and Wisconsin was number one, over 50%. You know what the number two in both Wisconsin and Georgia were? Of
immigration?
Issues? Nope.
Immigration?
No.
What is it?
Election integrity. 52% and 51% in Georgia and in Wisconsin. Immigration actually came in lower in Georgia than it did in Wisconsin. It was 43% in Wisconsin. I think it was 30s, 40s is in Georgia. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
That's a really good sign. That's a really good sign for the former president.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you look at this, because if that's going to be the here's another one interesting. They asked in Wisconsin, part of the poll came out concerning mental soundness of the nominees. In Wisconsin, this is a concern. If you're a Biden supporter, 61% had mental concerns on Joe Biden. Only 51% on Trump of the total poll. That's an interesting, number to look at here. Breakdowns, crosstabs are all there. This was a sample 26th through the 30th. So in the last week, this was landline, cell phones, and text, full sample, 3% margin. Beacon Research Shaw, this is one that did it. So anyway, not to dwell on that, Chip, but I mean, I think you and I look at these numbers right now. For all the hand-wringing, which could get worse, and will probably get worse as it goes along, Donald Trump's in a unique position. And I made this comment to somebody the other day, and this will be where we sort of finish up politics for the night. I think, I've said this before, and we talked about this on the podcast. I think 2016 is at least a narrative you can point to because of the big themes of the Democrats, the more focus on individual issues by the Republicans. But take it back to 1980, okay? The first Reagan-Carter. Carter had Carter's numbers were were higher than where Biden's at. But if you remember that election, for those who historically have not, that election was close, very close up until the last couple of weeks. And then it broke for Reagan. And it broke because they actually started looking at the two candidates and they said, we really don't want to go further here with Carter. And there was a lot of things and it broke for Reagan. Here's an interesting thing. I think the last 3 weeks or possibly 4 weeks of this campaign, you're going to see a push that is going to be in many of these swing states that has some kind of ring like this. It's not resonating with Haley says it, but it will resonate, I believe. At least they're going to have to deal with it in the last 3 weeks, and that is, are you going to vote for Donald Trump for president, or are you going to vote for Kamala Harris for president? Because I think that's going to become more and more of a narrative when you look at this.
110%. Because I can't tell you how many people that I've just spoken with, rank and file people who don't do this for a living, people who aren't immersed in this like you and I are, and they say the same thing. I mean, I don't like Joe Biden, but he doesn't scare me, but the thought of Kamala Harris becoming president of the United States, is it's a lot different, right? I mean, it's 110%. I mean, for anybody that thinks that Joe Biden's going to make it, for anybody that thinks he's got another 5 years left in the tank, there's no way. I mean, he'd be lucky if he has another year left in the tank, and that's when the election is. So to think he can make it through another full term, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I have to. Well, I talked to somebody just the other day who's an observer. What I say is an interested observer. They follow, but they're not. They're not partying. Go to meetings, but they watch politics. They're informed. And that was the comment that this person made. They said, this looks. Watching him walk, watching him shuffle, watching him talk. It has this sort of very elderly nursing home kind of vibe to it. And it's an interesting time. So, look, folks, we got a lot coming up. Nikki Haley's still in, but as you can tell this week, I noticed this, Chip, the buzz around Haley on the media is not there. I mean, the media.
No, and you and I don't live in South Carolina. James doesn't either. But, it's like, there was a lot of national press, leading up to the Iowa caucuses, and then immediately kind of rolled into the New Hampshire primaries. It's like everybody's gone home, and it's like nothing's there, right? I'm sure if you live in the Columbia, South Carolina, or Charleston, South Carolina, or Greenville, Spartanburg media market, I'm sure you're getting inundated with, with paid ads, and I'm sure candidates are coming to your hometown, but if you're not there, it's it's just nothing. And I think that benefits Trump. I saw a poll today, still had him up 28 in South Carolina. I think you kind of, a few weeks ago, or but maybe it was last week's show or the week before, kind of thought that she might have had 2 weeks left in her. And I thought maybe 3 weeks. It still is hard to imagine with these numbers that we're seeing that she's going to take it to a vote, but we still have a couple weeks to find out.
Yeah, something that we're not going to delve into tonight. We'll delve into it on another podcast. The rise of Kevin McCarthy's revenge tour is starting, and it's interesting. We talked about this before. He's sitting personal campaign side, which he can roll over into a C4. I mean, he is sitting on 14 to 18 million, somewhere in that range. He still has some access to a PAC, leadership PAC. That's another, several millions in there. And Nancy Mace, Bob Good, and them are being targeted, and there's some stories coming out about that. Look forward to talking to you about that one soon. We get a little more detail on that one. Nancy Mace really got under his skin, and
she did, didn't she?
Oh, buddy. So, and she's got some credible candidates in that race. So, anyway, all right, bringing this around from politics to where we are to our last weekend, James. All right, Chip, here we go. James, the Lions lost, didn't they?
Sure did. Do you want me to elaborate, or I don't know what you guys want from me?
Well, at least
if I were to elaborate, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the Lions did the Atlanta Falcons a favor, except it just wasn't in the Super Bowl. They blew a lead like we did. Shanahan.
Yeah, now they're joined by the. Yeah, now they're joined. Now they're joined by the Detroit Lions, because no one will ever forget the Atlanta bit. But now you can say they're not the only idiots. And ironically, that idiot just got a job today, or yesterday. But Detroit losing's fantastic, because the Vikings are not going to be the only team that didn't win a Super Bowl in this division, because I was certain no matter what, if Detroit rolled into Chiefs Kingdom or whatever at Vegas, they were going to stomp them, because there was nothing that looked like it could stop this train. And thank God Dan Campbell stopped that train by himself, because we all know he hates to kick and all that. And I know all those people are mad that he didn't kick it, and I know you're supposed to feel out the game. I don't care, dude. He said, this is how I do it. This is how I'm always going to do it. If you guys think I'm going to do something different, come get me and try to take my 13 cups of coffee in the morning. I'm just really happy the Vikings got a win with the Lions losing, and that's really all that matters to me.
Well, James, I'm glad that you really got relieved because of another team's loss. So Chip and I, we were really worried about that. As we go here.
Glad you were.
I'll let James stay on the roll here for a second. James, would you have thought when we went into this after the first Monday after the season ended, we had Black Monday with coaches being fired? Would you have guessed at the end of the time that Belichick, Vrabel, and Carroll would not be coaching this next coming year, and Dan Quinn, who after that loss with the Cowboys just completely collapsing, ending up at the as Chip, for those who don't know, offline Chip aptly named the group the
Commodores.
Washington Commodores. So I think that was pretty cool.
I'm shocked. I got to be honest. I'm not shocked about Belichick, because I think you guys know what came with Belichick was the firing of a lot of people wherever he went. So the owner inevitably makes the decision, but all those other people were probably like, don't make that choice. That's a bad choice. You don't want him here, because they wanted to keep their jobs. But Mike Vrabel doesn't make sense to me. Mike Vrabel should be in Seattle, Washington, or Atlanta. I am absolutely shook that he does not have a job. He made a terrible Titans team competitive almost every year. And with the garbage that he was given this year, at least I know they weren't good, but they fought during games. I mean, they've lost some games, but the fact that Mike Vrabel's not a coach is more shocking to me than Bill Belichick, because I feel like Bill Belichick is just going to get a job next year. Like, I'm certain of it. Somebody's going to give him a job, but Mike Vrabel is shocking.
Yeah, look, Chip, what do you think? I'm not even going to. I've got to look at it.
I mean, I'm not so certain that Bill Belichick will get a job next year. Largely because he's 72 and next year he'll be 73, right? So depending on who you believe out of the Falcons camp. I mean, there's some people that say that age was a big factor, and other people that say he wanted total control. I tend to think age is a lot bigger factor than wanting total control, right? I mean, if you've just fired a head coach and you're looking to bring somebody else in, You're really going to bring somebody in that's 72 years old, and next year you're going to have to bring somebody in that's 73 years old. I mean, I think there's a possibility Bill Belichick's coached his last game in the NFL. I agree with James. I am surprised that Mike Vrabel doesn't have a job in the NFL. I think he will next year for certain. And candidly, it might be good for him to kind of take a year off. He can, get a contract with Fox or CBS and go into studio and kind of interact with the game of football that way. But a lot of surprises, man. I mean, if 2 weeks ago or 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when all these openings came about, I felt very certain that more than I did about Mike Vrabel. I thought for certain that Bill Belichick would have a head coaching job. To my knowledge, Atlanta was the only team that interviewed him.
Yeah,
certainly the only team that interviewed him twice. And that tells me it might not be good for Bill Belichick. He might have coached his last game.
Yeah, the interest wasn't there. I'm on a self-imposed at least another week before I'll come to have the heart to talk about Atlanta. I'm going to hold off another week. I'm going to just shake my head.
It's all we can do. It is.
Wait, Doug, I'm not telling you to comment on it completely, but do you think Raheem Morris was blatantly the wrong decision?
I don't think he's the right one, but again,
see, that's kind of where I'm at. We're like,
I'm hopeful.
I feel like this I think there's a new defensive coordinator wave coming. You guys noticing this? Maybe I might not be like breaking real news here, but
this is the DeMeco Ryan effect. We see this every year. See this every year. If the hot coaches who got hired this year, okay, let's just say this. Of all these coaches who get hired this year, let's just say Raheem is one of the hot ones, okay? That Atlanta goes on a 10-2, 10-6, we win 10, 11 games, make the playoffs, then there'll be more defensive coaches hired next year. Now, if these coaches don't, and you see the offensive-minded teams, then it's going to flip back to offensive coaches. It's just the way it seems.
We're just going to keep doing this until we lose our minds?
Until we just sort of go.
But
sense. The problem is Raheem has been in Atlanta. He was not hired before Arthur Smith. Like I said, I'm just trying to withhold right now because I don't want to be
Sure. No, we'll hang on to it. I was just curious.
I'm not happy.
I'm just very interested in the defensive.
Look, let's be honest. Let's be honest. Arthur Smith got fired for one reason. That's because we drafted Kyle Pitts, we drafted Bijan Robinson, I'm drawing a blank on Drake London
and Tyler Algier.
Yeah, and he couldn't develop them. So we fire him and we hire Raheem Morris and he's going to develop them?
No.
Well, see,
and then we hire the Chargers offensive coordinator.
Okay, that was what I was going to ask. What is wrong with them? I know that certain that is literally. I mean,
Atlanta's
he had
in the
quarterback, and
Atlanta is in the league many times to make Minnesota feel good about themselves. Okay, I mean,
that's what we've been saying about Cleveland, but now that they're good, I guess somebody's got to step up.
Well, I will give Arthur Blank credit on this. And this comes into account, Doug, in political campaigns when there's a big debate between candidates. And, we've said this many times before on this podcast. There's one way to win a debate. You have to exceed expectations. And so if Arthur Blank's job was to lower expectations amongst the Falcons on how good we're going to be next year, he did it. Because if Raheem Morris can do anything next year, I will be pleasantly surprised.
I am glad.
Speaking of Atlanta, why does Dan Quinn have a job?
No, I agree. I got it. Look, here. Okay, there's only one more inch, and again, I'm with Chip on this one, so we'll talk about it more later. But the fact that help me out here. Was it who hired? I just drew the blank. the most amazing scratch your head hiring of this entire cycle, though, is whoever hired Arthur Smith as offensive coordinator.
Steelers.
The Steelers, I mean, that's the first. As Chan Gailey loves to say, the Steelers are an organization you can count on every year to do it right. Somebody is asleep at the wheel. I mean,
well, just know that just know to draft the backup Steelers tight end in your fantasy draft, and you're totally fine because that's going to running back.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can't imagine why they would do that.
Chip brought up a great point about who's going to take Bijan, who's going to take these players, and again without a quarterback, for all intents and purposes, and they're going to bring in Raheem Morris to do that. You're going to take Arthur Smith, who had legitimate offensive talent on his side of the ball, and you're going to put him in what was arguably one of the most unorganized, poorly performing offenses this year. That if it wasn't for Tomlin, I think probably would have been even worse. And to expect him to turn that around, I just don't see that unless he's working for free.
Well, but look, I tend to agree with that from a 30,000 foot level, but I also know, Doug, that the graveyard of NFL head coaches is filled with people who don't make it good as number one, but do good as number two, right?
Well, and you got the
Arthur Smith had a lot.
Yeah, you got a lot of folks like that. And it's why Eric. Andy Reid has been such a good coach because he's been able to keep assistants who are good at number twos for a long time. And he's got that coaching staff, in there and working on it. Again, lots of discussion there. Hey, I tell you what, I'm going to save. I know I told it in the interview, in the first off, we were going to discuss quarterback. We're going to hold off closer to the draft. I'll just hold off closer to the draft. For those who are wondering, we have a text chain going between the three of us, and I agree with a former scout that Caleb Williams is not a generational talent. I've said that from day one. But we'll talk about that closer to the draft. I'll leave that off because I want to get to something else tonight. And that is, by the way, the Oakland, still call them Oakland. It'll always be Oakland in my heart. Raiders did finally sew up and get their coach, and I think that's going to be good. By the way, did y'all see the clip that they did right after he finally got the job?
No.
It was pretty cool. He walked in, they sort of show him walking into the office and turning around, and something, he looked at the camera and said something to the effect of "Raider up, let's go," or something like that. And it's like, oh my God, let's go run through a wall. It was great.
Yeah,
so I think Crosby and them, I'll start off the year, right now, and I love the Raiders, but I'll start it off right now saying, I think next year they could be the sleeper, in this, the Houston Texans kind of sleeper next year as we go. If they can put a quarterback together.
If their quarterback situation is right, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree as we go forward. All right, let's have some fun here. We've been going for a little while, and we hadn't had a lot of we hadn't had some fun topics in the last little bit. Now, one fun topic that's sort of gotten very old is at this point, and James brought this up with the conspiracy theories around Taylor Swift. Let me just get this out in the open now for everybody who wonders. Taylor Swift endorsed Joe Biden in 2020. It's not a shock that she probably will endorse Joe Biden in 2024. And the fact that she's dating Travis Kelce, for all of you out there who believe the internets that say that she's dating Travis to get famous, you're not the brightest puppies in the world. Let's just understand here. She's far more, whether you like it or not, understandably famous than he is, and far more wealthier than he is in this side. But the one thing is, I did see this one. This is the only Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce I'll let into the show today, and that is, I did see this. What are the odds? Let's do our bookmaking odds that after the Super Bowl, there's actually a poll. There's actually betting line on this that he proposes to Taylor Swift after the Super Bowl.
He ain't doing that. It's not happening.
Chip is so excited by that prospect.
The Kelce boys are constantly up to something, and they are for the theatrics, but then everyone would just assume it's a ploy and they're doing this for ratings in the NFL. Travis Kelce will not be allowed will not be allowed to propose to her after the Super Bowl. I assure you that.
Okay, well, I have a question. Was the other Kelsey brother in timeout this weekend? Did you notice that?
Oh yeah, no, he was on his best behavior.
Yeah, he was sitting he was sitting in one of the outside boxes with his dad. Yeah, they put him in with his dad.
His wife got.
Yeah, you can't.
You could tell during like the post interview, she's like, he told me he was going to do it, and I told him not to. He was in the doghouse.
Yeah, no, you only do that once a year.
Yeah, that was
you
it.
Certainly
that
don't do it every other. You certainly don't do it every week.
Did you guys see someone posted an idea? Maybe you guys saw this, that Jason Kelce, they should be an HBO series where Jason Kelce goes to every stadium during the NFL season, or as many as he can, and tailgates with the fans to get each tailgating experience, sort of like an Anthony Bourdain style football tailgate show. Honestly, I'm watching that every night. I am.
Fantastic.
Oh yeah,
that would be whoever thought of that. And then I wish I could get the guy's name. Genius idea.
He would be he would become the Tony Saragusa. We need a new goose.
And Absolutely,
he could be the new goose.
And he could do like one sideline thing. Every day he has to be shirtless. I'm all for it. Let's just do it.
I agree. I mean, it's cool, but Jason was definitely in timeout, and you could when you could see him, he was sitting there. I mean, he was definitely in timeout. Now his wife was up in the box with Taylor, but he was in timeout.
Because he couldn't talk to her. They were separated.
His wife didn't take her shirt off in Buffalo the week before and drank 30 Miller Lights.
Gotta love it. All right, moving right along to TV. This is the point in the show where James would interject the special music, the music from Elvis coming into the stadium for his concert or wherever, the big hype music here, because it was announced this week, Full Swing 2 is coming in March to Netflix. We're back, baby. Okay. We're back. And Rory is actually part of the Full Swing. This is going to be interesting.
Really?
Yep. Yeah, they did a lot of them this year. It looks like they went around and they did a lot of singles. But it's going to be interesting to see, especially with all the Live and other, because the first season had the beginning of Live. Well, this year was torture of Live, so to speak.
You want me to read off some of the names?
Yeah, read some of the names right quick.
So you got Rory, Justin Thomas, Dustin Johnson, Ricky Fowler, Tom Kim, Joel Damon, I don't know if I know who that is, Matt Fitzpatrick, Alec Fitzpatrick, Wyndham Clark, Keegan Bradley, and Justin Rose, along with Ryder Cup captains Luke Donald and Zach Johnson.
That's a good lineup.
That is, it's gonna be fun. So anyway,
the Ricky Fowler thing, he's the most fascinating person to me.
Ricky Fowler?
He's the only famous person I know who's done nothing. Ricky Fowler. Because it's not his fault. I'm not blaming.
Yeah, I think Chip and I could come up with we could come up with some folks there to help you out, James. Famous people who've done nothing. Unfortunately, a lot of them are in politics. But hey,
all right, you're right. The internet is filled with them. But I guess what I'm saying is, in this context, in sports, it's so rare that maybe a Dylan Brooks for basketball when he was just a villain. But it's a single sport. He has to accomplish things, and he doesn't. And they're like, yeah, but he's got an orange T-shirt on, so let's go for it.
Well, but he wears an orange T-shirt with orange pants, and that's why he's different.
True. It's the orange on orange. My apologies.
Well, so we've got Netflix coming back out with Full Swing. They kept that under wraps a great deal. I'm glad to see that happening as well. But turning back to our golden days of our youth, I don't watch a lot of TV much anymore at all. I just don't. I'm not home enough. When I am home enough, we'll watch a movie or we'll do stuff like that. But when I travel or especially when I have to go do other things, I see there's a channel called MeTV out there, folks, if you're ever wondering about it. It shows old shows from the 60s. In the morning, you can wake up with an old show called Dragnet. And if you've never watched Dragnet, I would highly encourage you to go find it. You talk about stuff that you never, and this is going to be our conversation here for the next little bit. Dragnet, Adam 12, Emergency. These were shows that were really interesting coming out of California. They're based out there, Chips in the 70s. But that had actually moral meaning to them. If you ever watch Dragnet, there's some, some really interesting conversations. But anyway, I digress into that saying I love to go back and look at these old stuff. So James and Chip, our goal for the next little bit is to discuss, and since James, yes, you claim to be a 2000s kid. For those of us who start all the way back in the 70s watching TV and 80s and the 90s and now 2000s for James, think about, let's do this first. Let's talk about it. Just right off bat, we'll go sort of quickly around because I want to get to some segments here. James, we'll start with you. Give us 3 shows from your child, or two or 3 from your childhood that if you
all right, well,
would do it.
I can give you one as a kid that I watched with my dad all the time. 2 of them, actually, we watched all the time.
Okay.
Three Stooges and Sanford and Son. And if we're talking about me personally, what I watched as a little kid, we're talking about like little kid, SpongeBob. Just a fact. That was my childhood.
All right. What about like when you grew up a little bit?
When I grew up a little bit?
With the 2000s, what were the 2000s show? Were you a Grey's Anatomy guy or were you a...
Occasionally I was forced to watch that garbage because my mom was watching it. I'm trying to, you know what I watched a lot when I came home from school? Scrubs.
Scrubs
okay. Was on a marathon every day after school.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, Chip.
Oh gosh, I'm
just 2 or 3 that just jump out at you as you remember.
I'm a little older than James. You mentioned Chips. I love watching that. Ponch and John, are you kidding
me?
Yeah. The California Highway Patrol, but oh yeah. How about Family Ties and maybe some Growing Pains?
Oh, there we go.
Growing Pains was on in my house a lot. I forgot about that.
From a ways back.
The era of Michael J. Fox.
Yes.
In the 80s, get it? Those were all classics. For me, going back into when I think about shows like that 30-minute, Lisa, my bride, does not like 30-minute shows. There's very few that she'll watch, but I grew up sort of watching them. So for me, 30-minute shows or an hour show is some of these, I would have to say growing up, were stuff like the Jeffersons. The hour show, the Hill Street Blues.
Oh wow! It was an hour.
Yeah, Hill Street Blues is an hour actually. But then you got to. You can't get away from the classics here. Cheers.
I was just about to say Cheers. Norm.
Cheers.
And
then
the
you
bar.
have, and then
Cheers
if you get into the 90s, you got Frasier. And of course, you got the all popular ones back in the day as well. You mentioned Family Ties and others. Facts of Life. You also mentioned you got to mention the Cosby Show from that time frame. Everybody watched. But then, so those are the ones that you remember. The one that I'm going to mention one, and I'm going to go back to, and we'll see, and I'll give you some time to think about it in this. One that was interesting to me, didn't last a long time, but and I think it was an hour, if I'm not mistaken, back in the day, was a show called The White Knight. And it was about Ken, he was a basketball coach, a white basketball coach who coached at an inner city school. And it was the funniest show. And they sort of did the whole thing with it. But I remember that was a topic as we go back. So I want y'all to think about it. And if you come up with one that you remember that, like, wow, I hadn't thought about that one in years. As we go. But, if you go back far enough here, and I would love to, did y'all ever watch, or I'm sure on reruns, some of you, Happy Days, Welcome Back, Kotter, those shows like that? James, does those even ring a bell to you?
Oh, yeah. No. Listen, I grew up, my parents watched all that stuff, and they were on reruns, so we watched any show you name from the 70s and 80s. I've probably seen part of it. I watched so much Cheers. Me and my brother used to do we did a marathon of Cheers later on in life, and it's even better now than it ever was when we were little because we couldn't pay attention. You can't pay attention when you're a kid. You're just like, yeah, whatever. I'll just some of this stuff is funny, but then you get the jokes when you're older. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah,
and it's so great.
Yeah, George Wendt. The characters in Cheers, and then when they blended into Frasier. was just just pretty amazing. All right, Chip, I'm gonna start with you.
Well,
go ahead.
Uh-oh.
No, I was going to say my favorite joke from Cheers is when Norm walks in and they say, "What are you up to, Norm?" And he says, "My goal weight if I was 7 feet tall." That's my favorite
joke. Yeah, those one-liners from Norm coming in were some of the best in the world. I mean,
all time.
The writers were just amazing in that. They go. All right, but Chip, back to it. One or two, and if you think of one, if we think about it now, how our world has changed, and the discussions that you have, think back to a show of the 60s or 70s or 80s that could not be made today.
Oh, wow.
In the form that it was in those days.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Can I phone a friend?
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, because James has mentioned one. Let's go to James. And then maybe that'll let you think of one. James, you named one, I think.
I named one?
Yep. That could not, there's no way the jokes could go up. There's no way. Absolutely no way.
Well, Sanford and Son.
There you go. There is
absolutely not.
No way.
I was going to say The Office. The Office is a pretty one that people talk about. And early Always Sunny. Like now they've changed a bit, but early Always Sunny could not do any of the stuff they did to start. That show's incredible. And another one, I don't know if they can get away with. I think they got away with it because it wasn't too crude. But you guys ever watch The League? I think that's one they were on the fence.
Yeah, I didn't say it. I didn't much. Chip, you thought of one?
How about Laverne and Shirley?
Okay. Yeah. Some of the jokes and stuff. Yeah, some of the
How about a little hard to replicate today?
Yeah.
All in the Family. That's the one.
And I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think as well. How about Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids?
Yeah, you couldn't do that as much anymore.
Probably couldn't do that today.
No.
Married with Children.
Yeah, Married with Children would definitely be a problem.
Yeah, you can't do that.
But you mentioned a second ago, the one of the big ones you could not pull off today is All in the Family.
No, can't do it.
Yeah.
How about the Dukes of Hazzard?
Nope, couldn't do Dukes of Hazzard either.
Could not do the Dukes of Hazzard.
That would be,
And here's the sad part about it, and this will be commentary. We do this for fun, and we're having fun with it. But think about it: if we can't have a show like All in the Family or Sanford and Son, that Maude, which is one that you don't hear about because it was even late night for back in the 70s. They wouldn't put it on until 10 o'clock. Maude, the Jeffersons would be hard in many ways to put on right now. But if you think about it, and I'm sure you see this, I don't know if you see it on your Instagram files. There's some places out there that do like old clips and stuff, and they show some of these clips, and it's like how the world has changed in 40 years. It's like now our sensitivity is like, oh, how can they say that? And the reality is when we watched it the first time, they were actually commentating on real life. It was not, when Sanford and Son was doing, when Red Fox would talk about the state of his community, and there's this one famous clip, and I'll clean it completely up. He's in court with his son Lamont, and Lamont's on for a speeding ticket, and there's two white officers who just arrested him, and they said, oh, there was no racial animus in this at all. And Red Fox gets up and he's playing the lawyer, and he turns around and he says, he said, do you arrest anybody else except they don't look like him? And they said, oh, we arrest people. He said, well, look around this courtroom. And around the courtroom was nothing but, African-American defendants. And it was like, but he was using words today that we can't use except in rap music. And, it was like, this was on, 9 o'clock TV every week.
Television.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Talking, Archie Bunker talking about the neighborhood and talking about, just showing. And again, it showed not that you applaud basically the racism or the ignorance, but it was stuff, Chip, that we heard. And James, I mean, in your neighborhoods, you heard, and it was almost like now we take away. And this is, the council culture of so much that we have in. If you're removing statues, you're removing history, you're removing these honest discussions, then that's not reflective of real life.
Yeah, there's a lot we can't do, and I think some of it's good. I think we've made some actual progress, but like for the statue thing, right? I don't have a problem with us taking it down. I have a problem with us not putting it somewhere to make it clear why that person was taken down.
Yeah,
that's what I think. Like, all right, let's use Robert E. Lee as an example, right? He fought in a war and essentially against America and what we have now, and his statue's taken down. But in my opinion, let's take it down and put it somewhere where we can discuss why it was taken down and what his historical context of it is. That to me makes more sense if you want to take it there. That's just how I feel about it.
Well, I heard this said a while back, Chip, and I'd love to get your comment. You're in for a problem style if you start judging past historical figures by current moral standards.
Oh, 110%. Look, you can't. Yeah, look, but it's where today's left wants us to go.
Right.
And I mean, everything's got to change, right? Look at the evolution of Joe Biden. Look at where the Democratic Party is today and where he is today, and some of the sound bites from the 80s when he was in the Senate. I mean, look, just this week we had the terrible tragedy in Jordan where we had 3 service members from Georgia, from a reserve unit in Georgia, that lost their lives. And all around national news, it said they were based at Fort Moore in Georgia. And I'm like, where's Fort Moore? I mean, that's Fort Benning.
Yeah.
That's the home of the infantry. It's Fort Benning.
Yeah.
But, I guess it didn't work. And they had to change the name because some historical significance. And, now they're talking about Fort Moore and nobody knows where the hell Fort Moore is.
No. Well, the question is too, is Chip, I don't care if Benning, the namesake of Fort Benning, was a dirty, rotten scoundrel. I would have never been able to tell you who that was.
Me neither.
I wouldn't.
I still today couldn't tell you who it was.
Couldn't either. And,
I couldn't tell you who Moore is either.
Hal Moore. You do know Hal Moore because Hal Moore is We Were Soldiers.
Okay, Hal Moore. I did not know it was Hal Moore.
It was Hal.
See, there you go. There you go.
I only knew that because I had known about it. So, look, but here, I'm going to and here's how we're going to end the program today. Because I didn't bring it up just to have fun and say, the council cultures, all this. But I believe fully in my heart that much of the progress made by in television, equality, others, came from those shows that pushed the envelope, that pushed the edge of talking about what it was like to live in a projects in the Good Times show, what it was like to live in basically a outside suburban New York, New Jersey kind of household, and all in the family, James, that, dealt with those issues and where you dealt with them. And it pushed us forward into the 80s when you got the Cosby Show and the Facts of Life, and you got these other, there's things powerful change that can take place there. But my question is where is those shows for the next generation? Where are we pushing ourselves to do better and we don't have them. We just don't have them. And I think that's the interesting, the point I was trying to make in this.
Well, I'll say this, and I'll let James comment to it, because back then racism was racism, right? Yep. I mean, racism was the traditional definition of racism, which means, one who holds a disdain for somebody else's race. Now, racism is somebody who disagrees with you politically. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, it's not. I mean, if you disagree with somebody politically, they must be racist. That's why they're doing that. And, back in the 70s and 80s, racism was racism. Today, it's a word that's thrown around, for political rhetoric. And I blame the left for that, but, the right's a little bit to blame for that too. But, everything now in politics is race. Everything. Joe Biden said so when, we had that opening for the Supreme Court. I'm going to pick an African-American female. Okay, well, he did. He's got the right to do that. And now he finds himself in a position, as we were talking about, he picked a vice president who's wrapping up her first term as vice president, and she's not a very strong vice president. And, it's put him in a position where, there are a lot of people that might vote for him over, Donald Trump, have concerns that he can't make it 4 years and that Kamala Harris might be president of the United States. It's a big deal.
It is. James, where do you see it going?
I guess the reason I think there's less shows like that, yes, because people try to avoid as many controversial topics as possible so their show gets to stay on the air. But also because I think because of social media, we have that 24/7. And I think outside of like real serious HBO shows and stuff like that, there's not a necessity for it because it's always in our face. So the shows that we have, I think, are somewhat to get us away from that for a little while. So like something like The Bear exists, right? You guys know that show. That show's not about your sexual orientation, racism, any of that stuff. There's parts of it in there, I'm sure. They have to always throw something in there. But for the most part, that's about a family that's really screwed up and just trying to make their way. And I think that's what people need the reprieve from a lot of the stuff because it's all online and there's no real answer for it. Because like Chip said, it's a lot of just, if you disagree with me, I think you're wrong. So if I had to guess, I would say most shows are trying to be a reprieve from it rather than force the element because back then you guys didn't have 24/7 coverage of everything.
Yeah, and that's partly true. I mean, Chip and I've seen that evolution in the in the staff offices for congressional. Used to they had to wait for the paper to come out or they had to look for something, and now they're they actually know about bills before we even know about bills. And you're a member of Congress. I mean, I've had that happen. I had a guy call in one time and chewed our staff out for why wasn't I a co-sponsor on a bill, and come to hear it, the bill had not even been dropped. It had only been spoken of on an interview that made it onto social media, and we had somebody chewing us out because we hadn't co-sponsored it. The bill hadn't even dropped yet.
Exactly.
So, look, we've got a lot of things going on, but isn't it amazing, though, guys, as we finish up tonight, that all of this is circular, all of it from politics to culture to sports to everything else. It all seems to roll back, into the same thing, and it's let's learn that everybody's valuable. Everybody is needed. Our society works best when we work together in the legal, prospects of this world. And that, the absolute goal, whether you go back to Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement, you go back to the abolitionists, is that we get to a society where folks are judged by being folks. We're honest with each other. We love each other. And you don't, and it hurt me the other day to see some of the coaches being hired in the NFL. We talk about coaches all the time. Some of the African-American coaches having to say how they felt about being in that. And when they didn't give the right answer, the media attacked them for it. And when they said, look, I don't want to be seen as being the adjective then coach. I don't want to be an African-American coach or the first. I want to be a coach. Is that not where we need to be? So I end tonight by saying, folks, look, let's truly live the dream of not treating anybody bad because of their race, their choices. Treat everybody well. You don't have to agree with them, folks, but, look, we're in this together. And if we're not in this together, we're going to be in trouble apart, and we got to keep that up. So another wonderful evening of the taping, a wonderful morning here on Friday for Friday's Finest. Hope you got something out of it today. We'll have a lot more next week when Chip and James and I get together again to bring you another Finest. Chip, your last word.
Hey, look, the Grammys this weekend. Then Taylor Swift gets on a plane. She goes to Tokyo. She does 4 shows. Then she goes to Las Vegas. Then she goes to Australia. It's going to be a long week, Doug, but we're ready for it. Thanks for listening.
Oh, Lord. Here we go. James, here we go.
Doug said it all. I mean, Chip just said it all. It's all about Taylor Swift until the Super Bowl ends.
Okay, my last word is I still think Nikki Haley gets out within the next 10 days before the South Carolina primary. This is over, and welcome to the longest general election period in history. And with that, we'll see you next time on the Doug Collins Podcast. Y'all all take care.